Hi, good afternoon or good evening. I'm Candace Lee. I'm the president of the Towns County Chamber of Commerce. Got a lot of great guests today on Chamber Connection here on Windstream. Today we're going to talk about Firewise, but to talk about Firewise we have to start with the basics. So Frank Riley's here, and I'm reading your title because I know I'm going to pronounce something or leave something out. Frank is the executive director of the Chestatee-Chattahoochee RC&D Council. And Frank's brought a volunteer with him today, and I ought to mention that Michael Corey, who he has brought with him today, is a volunteer extraordinaire. And I say that because Michael volunteers with a lot of different groups. So when you see Michael, you always kind of look at his shirt to see which name tag he's wearing today or which group he's representing, because he really is. He does a lot in our community here in Towns County. But Frank Riley, a lot of you folks know from not only from Firewise, but a lot of the other groups Frank has also worked with in the past. He's also driven a bus here in Towns County for a very long time. So, and I know people probably know you first for the bus driving, but Frank, what is an RC&D Council?
RC&D stands for Resource Conservation and Development Council. It's an organization, a nonprofit, been around since the 60s. It was originally designed to be the outreach for the USDA NRCS, which is Natural Resource Conservation Service. It was the community outreach, not governmental. We're a nonprofit. We're not government employees. At that time, there was a government employee in my position who was called a coordinator. So the NRCS, USDA brought projects for a community, and the RC&D did the work.
Okay.
Because RC&D, my council that I have, is 36 people from 13 counties. They all live in the communities where we work, so it's not like we're strangers going in to do a project. Okay,
and RC&D, I looked it up. It is to improve communities. It's pretty much anything that can improve the living standards of people in the community.
Right. And it's all natural resource related.
Okay, natural resource related. I got a question. When I looked it up, I couldn't find this information. Is Georgia the only one with RC&D councils?
No, every state.
Every state?
I think maybe one has one. Originally, there were 375 RC&Ds in the country.
Okay.
In 2011, they became defunded by the NRCS. It's kind of like the mama bird pushed the babies out of the nest. So we're all standalone nonprofits now. There's 11 in Georgia. Every other state has them.
Okay.
Some are active, some are not. In Georgia, out of the 11, there's probably 3 that are really active, us included.
Okay, and you are representing the Northeast Georgia area?
13 counties, from Hart County to Rayburn to Union to Forsyth.
Okay.
And that's our base work area. Now we cover the whole state for the Firewise program, and we cover the whole southeast for the Fire Adapted program. And the Appalachian we'll talk about, we go from here to Virginia.
Okay. So I didn't realize every state. I don't know why I thought it was a state organization, but it's just about every state.
Puerto Rico, Hawaii.
Okay.
They had them at one time.
Okay. All right. And then Firewise is just one of your projects that the RC&D, they didn't start Firewise, correct?
Firewise is a national program. It's international, actually. There's some in Europe. It's administered by the National Fire Protection Association out of Denver, Colorado.
Okay.
That's our organization does the electrical code, building, all the codes work, but Firewise is the one component of it.
Okay.
And so Firewise has been around for a long time. We're the state liaison. We cover the whole state of Georgia, all 159 counties for Firewise in Georgia.
Okay, so RC&D is the not the organizer, but the one that carries out Firewise in the state of Georgia.
Right.
Okay.
We contract with the Georgia Forestry Commission to do this.
Okay. So Firewise in our county, in Towns County, is how old? How long have you been promoting Firewise?
We started Firewise in 2008 when I was just a volunteer firefighter. Well, I still am, but at that time we had the big fire over here at Young Harris.
Right.
We realized, the chief and Mike Davis and I realized with the Forest Service, we needed something to educate the people on the dangers around them, because they're just living on Ramey Mountain and wherever in the woods. So in 2008 we started, and I started as a volunteer, just doing it as a volunteer, and we got 2 communities I think, to start with, ended up with 3, and it just, it's hard to do when you do it in the weekends and the evenings as a volunteer.
Right.
So that's when we started originally.
So going to Michael now, what is his title?
Michael is our leader, our chairman of the Towns County Firewise Citizens Coalition.
Okay.
And the reason why we have a Citizens Coalition is the Forest Service, FMO, Mike Davis, and our partners in this thing. We can go talk to a community and everybody's excited and they all sign up, but we don't live there. So the ball won't keep rolling if somebody inside the community or inside the county like Michael keeps the ball rolling.
So in all 13 counties in Northeast Georgia, there's a Michael?
No, we're working on it. No,
there's not.
We hope to have it. It just takes time to find. Michael, we call him a spark plug.
Yeah, he is a spark plug.
Marcy Elliott was one, Billy Snipes. They were predecessors of Michael, but it takes somebody like that who lives here and has contact with the citizens in his community and other communities to keep the ball rolling. Otherwise, it'll just die from lack of interest.
Okay. We've been talking about Firewise, but there's a lot of people that don't know what Firewise is. Can you, and I know it's got a big description because Firewise is a lot of things, but what is Firewise mainly?
Well, anybody that wants to know can go to firewise.org and look it up.
Okay.
But Firewise is a wildfire education program that's administered, like I said, for NFPA. It's to teach people who live on these mountains or in the valleys or wherever that are not accustomed to living in the mountains that there's a danger. We have fuel all around us that you could have a fire in your house quickly. So we teach them, remove the leaves from the roof, under the decks, crawl spaces, just, harden your house where if there's a fire, a leaf fire, they won't necessarily burn your house down.
Okay.
And I'll say this. You see on TV the California wildfires with the raging, they burn 400 houses. They're so close together that one house catches the other, and that's what causes those. We don't have that here, but if we burn one house, it's a tragedy.
Yes.
Even though we don't have 400 to burn, but we try to prevent every house from burning. And we haven't burnt one since I started this. I'll take credit.
Oh, wow, that's great. Well, and I know we've talked a lot, but I don't think I knew that statistic, so that's really good.
Right. Well,
and when you were talking about the big fire, I always call that the big fire in Young Harris, because I remember I was at the Blue Ridge Mountain EMC at that time, and that was where headquarters were for all the staging that went on to try to put the fire out. That did get very close to homes. Right. It got very close on, I don't know if it was the back of Mining Gap Road or exactly where that was, but that was the scariest part. I know burning forests down is horrible, but that was where it got the closest, right?
It threatened Ramey Mountain, Frog Pond, because it came over the top and they boarded that. Ashland Cove was not burned because the wind didn't shift. If it had shifted, it could have come right through the valley and up Ashland Cove. We were actually on that fire, some of our volunteer teams in there trying to put it out. Now, I'd say this, it didn't burn the forest down. It just burnt the undergrowth,
right?
Which sometimes is good. But
that's what I've heard, that a lot of times it's good to burn up what you guys always call fuel, and I always think of gas and oil and stuff, but fuel is dead timber.
Leaves, dead trees, limbs. And we used to do a lot of burning routinely. We're promoting prescribed burning now with under controlled conditions. They don't do it as much as they used to because there's houses everywhere. My ancestors used to light the fire at the bottom of the mountain and just burn out somewhere way over yonder, And then you reduce the fuel. The animals have more green new plants to eat. The water goes in rather than running off. So there's a lot of good things about the fire. We don't like it like that one because it was out of control.
Okay.
We didn't know where it was going.
Right.
So
that was 2008, and that's really when you got Firewise cranked up in Towns County. Right. Did you already know about Firewise? You didn't know about it?
That was my first experience. Actually, the chief and Mike Davis and Mike knew about it, so he brought it up to us, and I started looking into it. And, we had 3 Firewise communities for about 5 years until 2013 when I was asked to be the network hub for something called Fire Adapted Communities, which is a national program.
Right.
We're one of the first 8 to do that. And the Fire Adapted includes Firewise, Ready, Set, Go, which is evacuation, and a whole lot of other stuff. And once we did that, our wildfire calls have dropped 75% since we started this education program.
That's incredible.
But we went from 3 in like 2013 to 21 Firewise communities in Towns County today.
So, Michael, before you, and I know you're not originally from Towns County.
No, I'm not. Well, spent a lot of time in Florida, like many other people that are up here now.
Okay, so in Florida, were you aware of Firewise?
No, and when we thought about building a home up here, my wife and I, we want, like many people, wanted to be nestled in the woods and almost like a bird's nest. And the closer the trees were and the brush were, the better it would be. And we found out that that's not quite what you want to do, and you do not want to be at the end of a remote road that you cannot get emergency vehicles to you. But unfortunately, that's not marketed. It's the environment of being away from the high-density areas and retire in the woods, and even if you only have a part-time home. So the education process of letting people know that move into this area, and some of them that are already here, that you don't necessarily want to be as close to those trees as they brush up against your home or over your home. And as Frank said, that is really fuel. And I know that in the last 10 or 11 years that I have lived up here, when I look at a forest, I see beautiful trees for sure,
Right.
but I also see fuel.
Right.
And I never saw that before because I never considered it. As much as I've hiked it, you just never consider it as fuel. But indeed it is. So what Firewise tries to do, and as Frank mentioned, 2008 was, and if you think about that, 2008 was the beginning of it in Towns County. In the country, it started in 2002 with about a dozen communities as just a plan, just a try, and let's see what happens with it. And can we decrease these fires that are debilitating communities and just destroying homes? Well, in 6 years, it ended up being in Towns County because of a fire, but the groundwork was laid. And then it grew because of the participation of volunteers,
Right.
of citizens, and because of Frank's effort and people like Mike Davis and Tony Harkins, so the U.S. Forest Service and the Department of Natural Resource with Georgia have been remarkable, absolutely remarkable, in enabling this program to continue and to flourish. So yes, we have 21 communities in Towns County, and Towns County is not a high densely populated area. So what we try to do then with Firewise is to enable people through their own effort and their own function and work to decrease the likelihood that they will suffer the consequences of the fire. We can't prevent it. And we can't tell everyone that this is proof that it will not involve you. But you play the odds, and you try to stack the odds in your favor so that those trees over you hanging your wooden deck aren't a good idea.
Yeah.
So we try to communicate that. That garden growing out of your gutters is really not a desirable place.
You've been to my house, haven't you, Michael?
In many other ways, as Frank mentioned, leaves and pine needles and those issues that are mostly common sense. And there's even some ways to build your home so that you decrease the likelihood that you will be encompassed by a fire when it comes up to your neighborhood. There are multiple pictures, and we've all seen the devastation of out west in areas like Paradise and the Camp Fire, and it's terrible, it's tragic, or in Gatlinburg, a lot
Right.
closer,
Oh, yeah.
or in the Nantahala. A couple of years ago, an awful lot of smoke coming from the Nantahala forest.
Yeah.
So we try to communicate to people that that is us.
It could be.
It
yeah.
can be us, and it's not a matter of if it can occur. You can't sit on this much fuel and not expect something to happen eventually. All you can do is try to decrease. And there's a magic word that the Firewise and all of the fire and forest service agencies like to use. And Frank's smiling because he knows I'm going to say mitigation.
Okay.
And mitigation is a nice fancy word for saying lessen, decrease.
Well, that's a great stopping place because we've got to take a break. I hate that too because I had about 10 questions, and I know when we come back I'll probably have forgotten all of them. But you're watching Chamber Connection. I'm Candace Lee from Towns County, and we're visiting with the Firewise folks today, so stay tuned.
If the It's one thing we love, it's watching TV. With today's busy lifestyles, we're finding ourselves away from our television a lot more. As a Windstream cable customer, you can still watch your favorite entertainment with Watch TV everywhere. It's TV you want, when and where you want it, with access to over 50 channels, all free as our cable customer. Just go to WatchTVEverywhere.com and start enjoying an incredible on-the-go viewing experience from Windstream Cable Television.
Hi, welcome back to Chamber Connection. I'm Candace Lee. I'm the president of the Towns County Chamber of Commerce, and we're visiting with Frank Riley and Michael Khoury to talk about FireWise and some of the things you can do and just really common sense things you can do to prevent fire around your home. And I think that's where I want to go with this next little portion is we were talking about education briefly. We said that's the way, like Michael was saying, that's the way to prevent. You said it too, just having the basic education that wasn't there years and years ago, or it was there but we weren't taking advantage of getting it into the homeowners' hands. This is, and I've brought just a little bit of what you provide to the Chamber of Commerce on the FireWise program and fire-adapted communities, because I think that's another important part of this. You mentioned it. But as Michael's position with the group, I know there's a volunteer group that you are also with a lot for your meetings. What do you guys meet every month?
We do.
Okay.
We meet monthly, and the coalition, again, is a volunteer group. But we meet with the Forest Service personnel, and we get an agency report of those issues that involve any activity we can participate in to try to get communication out, whether it's information about Arbor Day or volunteer groups being involved in the Fire Prevention Day to try to set up information tables in the front of grocery stores or in city centers to try to enable people to come and get the information. It's not that it's not of interest to people, but it as Frank will tell you, unless you make the information available all the time and communicate this all the time, it's out of sight and out of mind.
Right.
So these issues are very important to the survival of our community, and if you ever want a viable sense of reality, go over to Gatlinburg.
Yeah.
Now, that was a devastating issue, and that firestorm was not because their community didn't rake leaves. That was a totally different issue. But it enabled some homes to survive that would not have survived. So when you see pictures of a home sitting on a mountainside, quite similar to mine, and you see trees all around and maybe a couple of driveways and a couple of trails, and you see that home standing and everything around it has burned just to a crisp, it's because that homeowner took the appropriate action to make that fire go around him, not through him. And there's a huge difference. So we deal with fires in our environment. If we live in the middle of a town, can you still have the problems of a forest fire? Well, yes, secondarily. But if you live in a forest, in an area where there is fuel around you, you are guaranteed that at some point it will impact you.
We were talking about Towns County having a lot of FireWise communities, right? You've got...
There are 21, yes.
21 in Towns County. And Frank, you were saying that Towns County is above the rest in the state of Georgia as far as number of communities that are FireWise?
Georgia has, we're the liaison, we deal with all 159 counties. Georgia's got 104, 108 FireWise communities in the whole state. Michael's got 21 of them in Towns County.
Okay.
So that shows you the percentage.
Even for our little county.
And there's only, 10 or 11, 12,000 people in the whole county.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So the tallest county in the state, I think.
So on the communities that are FireWise, I don't know if that's called FireWise certified or
recognized.
Recognized.
Right.
those have more than how many homes in them? What qualifies a eight or more
have to
homes?
have 8 or more homes. It can be just a cluster of homes. That's not got to be gated and not got to be organized.
Or a name or anything.
Yeah,
it just has to be a group of 8 homes or more.
A community.
Okay.
Yeah, and the thing about it is it's all volunteer. There's nobody comes out and says, "Oh, we're going to take it away because you didn't do whatever." You have to renew every year. You have to have some kind of in-kind input every year. We have some stipulations there to stay in the program.
Okay.
Because at the end of the year, if you have not done that, then we, as a liaison, will deactivate that community. So far, we hadn't had to do but 1 or 2 in the whole state. So
Oh, good.
pretty good. Georgia's 5th in the country as far as number of Firewise communities, and we're number 1 in the South. So that says a lot.
Do you find that the communities that have a homeowners association in that community, do they do better with getting the information?
It's more organized. It's simpler to get out the word and to get many of the community members to be involved in it, yes. Typically, you don't get all residents in a community to participate, and that's understood.
That was my next question.
All of everything never happens.
Okay.
But if you can get a majority of them, and as Frank said, if you can get 8 in the community to commit to participating in the program, which requires on an annual basis function, not money. There's never a dollar involved in any of this. Nobody asks for an annual fee or annual membership fee. Money is not involved.
Okay.
In fact, it's just the opposite. Communities can be saved money quite a bit by participation. As an example of that, let's say you have a community of 10 residents, and let's say you have your 8 to participate. Well, when they first start off, there is an inspection process, and someone from the fire community will come out and they will look at the exterior of each home for which that homeowner gives permission. And they will they'll go down a checklist. It's a predefined checklist of does this condition exist, does this condition exist, and so on. And that paperwork is turned over to the homeowner. It doesn't go to a government agency.
Right.
It doesn't go to an insurance company. It's handed to that homeowner, and that's the end of any record of it. There is no other record of it, period. And that homeowner then can say, oh, gee, here's a notice that I've got to clean out my gutters, or under my deck is full of dead leaves, and I thought that would be a great idea for insulation, but maybe not.
Yeah.
Or I've got to get this stack of wood that I burn off my deck. Because now, gee, I think that next to the kerosene fuel, maybe it's not a great idea. So, but it's convenient when I step out the door, but it's not a great idea.
Yeah.
So they will take that and hopefully they will use it to prune back trees, to clean the pine leaves and the pine needles from around the house and under the deck and so on. Clean the gutters, as we mentioned, and other things. And that will enable then the community to recognize that they have cleaned up their act a bit for each homeowner.
Right.
And hopefully it draws a unity to the community because, it's a lot of elderly people like myself, and some can't do the work themselves.
Right.
They can't go out and prune the trees. They can't cut down the trees that's hanging over the deck. But yet, if the neighborhood comes together as a Firewise community, as we've done in our community, then we'll go help somebody cut down a tree. And I know in our own subdivision, we call a day or 2 every year, and we have it just a volunteer from a community come and clean up and cut down a few trees and do what that have died and so on.
Yeah.
And that works great because it's the word unity out of community. Well, and it works.
So out of the communities that are Firewise, wouldn't you say, or the homes that are in those communities, wouldn't you say if you had your house on the market right now, Michael, and I knew that home was part of a Firewise community, that would even make me want that home more. You know what I mean? It's appealing to people to think that this community is, and that's just a thought off the top of my head, but it's got benefits that you don't even think about outside of preventing fire or just to be safe. To me, it's also a selling point, or it's also a bragging right, which leads me to all of the great recognitions that Towns County has gotten and our Firewise program. You are, and we've had things written in the newspaper. Tell me about some of them, because I know Towns County shines with FireWise.
Well, Towns County is, when I first was asked to do the fire adapted, naturally I came here because this is where I live, and I was in the fire department. So we started the fire adapted program, which it's not a program itself, it's an overall umbrella with FireWise, Ready, Set, Go, fire department, all this stuff under this umbrella. You become fire adapted, which means everybody knows what to do in case of a fire. So we started that, and that brought the spotlight to Towns County. So when I go to Reno, coming up soon, Oregon in April, Asheville last month, everybody wants to know about Towns County.
Oh, wow.
It's not RC&D, which is fine with me. It's Towns County is the one that sticks up on the map every time we have the map, the national map. So
that's really important that everybody knows. You guys are asked to go talk to groups across the country about this.
Talk all over the country.
Yeah.
And originally we were one of the only 8. There was 8 original hubs, we called them back then, and we were the only one east of the Mississippi. Man, with only 2 of Mississippi, one in New Jersey and me down here, the only one east of the Mississippi. Now everybody else is out west.
Well, let's real quick, because we're going to have to bring you back another day. I just can already tell, but if somebody's watching the show today and wants to know how they can become or talk to their neighbors about becoming a FireWise community, what do they need to do? Do they need to call you first,
That's
Michael?
a good step.
Okay.
You can give me a call. You can call Frank, or you can go online to firewise.org and make the communication there. They have their coordinators, and they do a very good job of outreach to the locales. And I just tested that recently, and I asked a question, and I got an immediate feedback. So it does work. They are very responsive on a national level. But absolutely, give me a call. I live in the community, and I will be glad to respond. We are looking for people to be active in our coalition. We're looking for individuals that live in a community to be that point of contact for their community. And again, it costs nothing.
Okay.
Zero.
And let's make sure everybody knows that these folks not only travel all over the country talking about FireWise, but they also are at a lot of events. So if you see Michael or Frank or even some of the other coalition members.
Or a 13-foot Smokey blow-up.
A 13-foot Smokey blow-up. You know Smokey the Bear, right? So look for FireWise whenever you see Smokey the Bear. But come by the chamber office. We have a volunteer in the office that's very involved with FireWise. She makes sure Frank gives us the information we need to hand out. But just this one about cleaning out around your house is incredible. So
It's so simple.
Get this information, and I can hook you up with one of these guys. But firewise.org, send the information through that website, and it'll find Michael. It'll get to Michael.
Absolutely.
But just a fantastic program, and who knew that 10 short years that it would bloom to this level? So I mean, it's from not knowing about it till.
Well, we're from here to Virginia now too. We're asked to take Towns County up the Appalachian chain.
It's just
so we're doing that too.
Very, very. You should be very proud. I mean, I know you've worked hard at it, and then with getting Michael involved, and I'm sure Michael's been involved with it for a while.
Well, it's been an honor to work with Frank and Tony Harkins and Mike Davis and the other individuals involved in the Forest Service and in this program. It really is. It's been a privilege.
Well, and we'll see you. I know we'll see you at all kinds of events, and just watch for Smokey. Just look for Smokey. So thank you guys for joining us today, and we will have them back because I want an update on all their public speaking that they're going to be doing in this coming year. So I'm Candace Lee with the Towns County Chamber of Commerce, and you have been watching Chamber Connection.